And so the sun sets in another violent moment in the lives of the Medici. For anyone who thrills to tales of wealth and corruption and intrigue, even in the highest reaches of the papacy, this is a series for you. Hello, I'm Rafael P. Roman.
And I'm Midge Woolsey. In fact, we want you to cheer the arrival of Lorenzo the Magnificent by calling the number on your screen to thank this station for the Medici. Support this series and all the other programs you depend on with a generous contribution.
Show your support for this station with a $60 contribution, and we'll send you the lives of the artists by the 16th century art commentator and theorist Giorgio Vasari, a man who was personally acquainted with many of the painters and sculptors he writes about. When you join this station with a contribution of $120, we'll thank you with your choice of the companion double VHS set of the Medici or the single DVD of all 4 hours of this docudrama series. For your generous contribution of $250, we'll send you Laurie Schneider Adams' beautifully illustrated study of Italian Renaissance art, covering the artists, sculptors, and architects who flourished for years under the patronage of the Medici. We want you to have the best thank you for the best contribution you choose to make.
And do feel free to use your credit card once you decide on the amount that's right for you. Please have it with you when you go to the phone. Again, call the number on your screen or go to this station's website. All we ask is that you make the most generous contribution that you can. And here with us in these final hours of our story of the Medici is David Grubin. David is the man behind the critically acclaimed biography of Abraham and Mary Lincoln, A House Divided, which PBS presented a short time ago. And we've also talked about your 4-hour series on Napoleon. Welcome again, David.
Welcome, David.
As a producer, from your experience in producing history projects like this, with regard to Napoleon, for instance, what are the major hurdles in bringing these kinds of things to television?
These characters are so huge. They're so larger than life. Somebody like Napoleon is so encrusted with legend and myth. But the real challenge for me always is to get to the human being, because they're all people. They all started small, as it were, before they built legends around themselves. And so I'm always looking for those little humanizing details. You know, I think it was Montaigne that said that you can sit on the loftiest throne in the world, but you're always sitting on your own rump.
David, that's a good one. I remember that one. Now, what about the production hurdles?
Well, of course, when you're making a film about the Medicis or Napoleon, no television back then. There weren't any movies. You've got to recreate it all. You've got to give the impression of the past. It has to be realistic, has to be truthful. It means costumes. It means craning shots. You're talking about feature film quality. That takes a lot of money.
Right, right. And particularly on PBS, which really vets the quality of products, right?
Well, PBS, the great thing about working for PBS is that they expect the quality to be there, and they expect to have a real strong factual basis on which all this production value happens. And that's a real challenge, but that's I wouldn't want it any other way.
Talk a little bit about, and I know that we ask you this time and time again, but it really is the essence of what we do, why viewers should not only contribute, but support what it is that we do here. Or maybe I should say not only support, but contribute to what it is that we do.
Well, one thing I always feel as a filmmaker is that when I set out to do a PBS program, I know that there's not going to be any commercials. That once it gets going, I've got to keep the viewer engaged all the way through. And that's an extraordinary challenge, but it's the way you go to the movies. And PBS gives you that intense experience without any breaks, without any pitches that come into the middle of it. And I think that makes PBS very, very special. Nothing interrupts your engagement with the material. There's nothing that takes you out of the experience. And so I love to produce programs for PBS for that reason, and I think people shouldn't forget that it takes their contributions to make it possible to have programs without commercials.
Right.
Okay.
And it's only moments like this when we do interrupt, because we need them, because without them, we can't do it.
Thanks, David. We'll talk more later. You know, everybody who's familiar with public television and stations like this one knows that it takes a lot of money from a lot of viewers to keep these programs on the air year after year. So please do take a moment to thank this station not only for this dramatic family portrait of an extraordinary dynasty, but for all the programs you enjoy here.
Become a member of the station and a partner in preserving it as a public trust for a long time to come. After all, this station doesn't belong to some giant conglomerate or commercial corporation. It belongs to you for as long as you're willing to support it with your annual contribution. Even with the death of a Medici pope, this dynasty continues to write its own history in revenge, intrigue, and corruption in high places. It's a history that includes murder, a lust for power, and wealth beyond your wildest imagination. All the ingredients for epic drama indeed. If you're an opera or even a soap opera fan, we couldn't have come up with a better series than The Medici. Hello, I'm Raphael P. Roman.
And I'm Midge Woolsey. You know, you're absolutely right, Raphael. Truth is certainly livelier than fiction, if we can judge by this series on the Medici. So if you're enthralled by the story of a powerful dynasty of merchants and bankers and sinners which changed the history of Western Europe, and if you're caught up in this family of decadent, art-loving, tough guys, then let us know in the best way we love best. Make a contribution for more exciting and lavishly produced series like The Medici.
That's right, Midge. It's as simple as that. Show your support for this series and this station with a $60 contribution, and we'll send you the lives of the artists by the 16th century art commentator Giorgio Vasari, who knew firsthand many of the painters and sculptors he writes about. Join the station with a contribution of $120, and we'll thank you with your choice of the companion double VHS set of The Medici or the single DVD of all 4 hours of this docudrama series. And for your generous contribution of $250, we'll send you Laurie Schneider Adams' beautifully illustrated study of Italian Renaissance art, covering the artists, sculptors, and architects who flourished for years under the patronage of the Medici.
And we're very happy that David Grubin, one of the most prolific contributors to public television, has joined us for our series on the Medici, and we welcome you again, David. You've been with public television for how many years? Do you know?
My whole career. Really,
that's right, your entire career. So as you look back, what have been some of your favorite contributions?
I have to say they're all my children. I hate to single out any, but I've made films about art, about poetry, about history, current affairs, science. So I guess I would say that on my good days, I feel like a Renaissance man. Mm-hmm. My bad days, I feel like a dilettante.
So what's your next project?
Well, there's something I'm really, really attached to. It's a film about Robert Kennedy. And, you know, I lived through that time. And as a filmmaker, to have the chance to go back and to look at all that footage and reconsider it as a mature adult, you know, I was in my 20s then, it's a real privilege. And I grew so close to him. I never knew him. But that's the way I felt when I was finished, and that's a real privilege.
And when is that coming to PBS?
It's going to be on American Experience in October.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm also just beginning a whole series about immigration, focusing on why people come to America, and that's very
exciting to look forward to. As the television landscape expands, I mean, and it has been doing that in an incredible way, what do you think distinguishes public television?
I really think that it's quality and depth, that you really have the chance to do the best that you can, and you're not thinking about ratings, you're not thinking about pitching to the lowest common denominator. You're really thinking about the subject and how to really deliver it in the most effective way. And PBS used to have a saying, something like, if PBS doesn't do it, who will? And I really still hold to that one. I really believe that. And I think if you could give your support to PBS, your contributions to PBS, it does make all the difference.
They are the public in public television, our viewers, right?
And excellence is an easy thing to contribute to. It should be anyway.
Yeah.
Sort of painless.
Thank you, David.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now is the time to thank this station for the Medici. You've heard their name for years and knew, probably in a vague way, how important they were to the Italians in the old days, but now you're meeting an entire family dynasty in a way you'll never forget.
You know, this series is a dazzling example of what you can always expect from us when we have your support. The TV critics have given the Medici their 5-star approval, and if you agree, then please make your contribution right now.
Support the programs you enjoy here and support this station's community-wide activities by calling the number you see on the screen and making the most generous contribution you can.
If we've heard from you during the last couple of minutes, we thank you. Take it from me. You'll truly enjoy the satisfaction that comes from being one of our partners. Thanks.
In a moment.
Well, obviously nothing keeps the Medici family down for long, and with Galileo about to take on the establishment, things are going to heat up even more. What a cast of characters and what a story. Hello again, I'm Midge Woolsey, urging you to call the number on your screen and tell us how much you're enjoying this family saga.
Hello, I'm Rafael Piroman. You have only a few minutes to make that call before we get back to our story, so please, pick up your phone and make a contribution to tell us how much you appreciate what we do here all year long. In fact, this is one of your last opportunities to get the home video or the DVD of this series or a book on Renaissance art. There are thanks to you when you make a contribution now.
Show your support for this station with a $60 contribution, and we'll send you the lives of the artists by the 16th century art commentator and theorist Giorgio Vasari, who knew firsthand many of the painters and sculptors he writes about. When you join this station with a contribution of $120, we'll thank you with your choice of the companion double VHS set of the Medici or the single DVD of all 4 hours of our docudrama series. For your contribution of $250, we'll say thanks for that generous gift by sending you Laurie Schneider Adams' beautifully illustrated study of Italian Renaissance art, covering the artists, sculptors, and architects who flourished for years and years under their Medici patrons. And please do have your credit card with you when you phone if you want to charge your contribution.
If you use the resources of this station and enjoy the tremendous variety of programs you find here, don't you think it's only right to make a financial contribution as well? Please, call the number on your screen and support this station with whatever contribution is right for you. Say thanks for the Medici and for all the programs you depend on here on PBS.
With us now to talk about the Medici and this extraordinary series is Greg Dieffenbach, the Vice President of Production and Development for DeVilliers Donegan Enterprises, the producers of this and other outstanding specials that you've seen on this station in recent years, and we welcome you, Greg.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Now, I understand you've been with DeVilliers Donegan for 7 years.
About 7 years
now,
yeah.
But those two guys have been in this business and with PBS for years and years and years, correct?
Absolutely.
So remind us of some of the great projects that you guys have been involved in.
In the last few years, we've had the privilege of bringing a number of programs to PBS, mostly large historical programs. Napoleon was a series produced by David Grubin that we helped bring to PBS. We did a series on the Greeks, Rome, Egypt, Martin Luther. It's a whole series in a strand called Empires that we've been working on for a number of years now with PBS.
Hey, Greg, how important were viewer dollars to all those productions?
It's critical. The shows are, as you can see, they're high production value shows. They don't come cheap. They're a lot less expensive than a feature film, but they still cost quite a bit of money, and they draw on the talent of an enormous pool of resources, of people. They're costume designers, they're historians, they're set decorators, there are actors, as you'll see in this show. And it is expensive. It requires a lot of effort and a lot of resources.
So why do you think that public television is perhaps the last and best showcase for this kind of series?
Public television is really important here because you see a dedication to accurate historical storytelling. It's not just glitz with no substance. What you've got here are the actual stories. We start with historians. Those stories are then shaped to make sure it's entertaining television, but they're factual from top to bottom, and PBS is excellent at that. It's the marriage of the history and then the high production values that give you the drama that makes great television.
And I would imagine that the producers really relish the fact that they're able to do what they do to the best of their abilities on public television, right?
It's a great privilege for many of them. Are often dealing in environments where they don't have the kind of appreciation that PBS and a PBS audience brings to this kind of a subject. So, yeah, it's a great privilege for the filmmakers.
Okay, we'll talk more, so stay where you are. As we've said, we urge you to call the number on your screen or visit the station's website to make your contribution at whatever level works best for you. So if you count on this station for programs that enrich your life, then let's hear from you right now.
And by the way, when you charge your contribution on any major credit card, we can put your dollars to work right away. If you've called us during the last few minutes, we thank you for your support. And of course, if you haven't called yet, please do it right now as we return to the Medici, the godfathers of the Renaissance. Thanks.
Well, we're now in the final hour of our story of the Medici family and a Renaissance period filled with turmoil and glory. We'll return to the last of the Medici in just a few minutes, but first, we're looking for your vote of approval for this television special and for all the programs in this station's schedule. Hello again, I'm Midge Woolsey.
And I'm Rafael Puraman. Show your support for this station with a $60 contribution, and we'll send you the Lives of the Artists by the 16th century art commentator Giorgio Vasari, a man who was personally acquainted with many of the painters and sculptors he writes about. Join us with a contribution of $120, and we'll thank you with your choice of the companion double VHS set of the Medici or the single DVD of all 4 hours of this docudrama series. And for your generous contribution of $250, we'll send you Laurie Schneider Adams' beautifully illustrated study of Italian Renaissance art, covering the artists, sculptors, and architects who flourished for years under the patronage of the Medici.
Of course, when you support our programs, the best thanks we can give you is another year of television at its best. So let's hear from you now. We're back with Greg Dieffenbach, who, as we've mentioned, is the Vice President of Production and Development for de Villiers Donegan Enterprises, the company which produced the Medici and so many other important documentaries you've seen and enjoyed. And we welcome Greg once again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Let's just cut right to the chase. I mean, the real reason that we're here is to encourage people to call in and support what we do here on public television. Why do you think people should call?
I think it's critical that they call. I hope they do, because these kinds of programs are very challenging to make. They require an enormous contribution from all the people who work on them, and they require funding. And that funding, it has to be raised. They're not inexpensive shows to make. They're very difficult shows to make. They have very high production values, and they really need support.
And it's important for everybody to understand that when they call, the money is helpful, but the vote in support of this particular kind of programming is absolutely the most important thing, right?
It tells everybody involved in PBS, all the producers, all the people who are involved in making this kind of programming, that people are out there, they're watching it, and they care about it.
Greg, at what point did you feel compelled to tell this particular story?
I was traveling through Italy and was struck by, at every turn, just struck by the history that was waiting there to be told. We live in many ways in the shadow of all the Medici achievements.
Right.
And to many people, those stories aren't known. They don't know the connection between Michelangelo, Lorenzo the Magnificent. These people were alive at a very dramatic moment in time, and I thought that we could help bring this to television.
So what was the next step in terms of proposal writing, raising funds, and then moving on into production?
Well, very quickly after you come up with the idea, the reality is you have to think seriously about who's going to fund it. So we turned to PBS as a likely partner, and I would say very quickly PBS recognized the value of this kind of story and came to the table and joined in this effort.
And Greg, it's so important to tell a story like this. As I was telling you and Midge, I spent a year in Florence studying this material, but there's so many things that I didn't know that I found out in this 4-hour production. That's what PBS brings to the table as well. Education for everybody.
Absolutely. You know, the truth is, with a story like this, it starts with historians. You're going to research these stories and find out the detail of people's lives. And in that detail is the drama that was the Renaissance. And it's absolutely real. It's a true story.
And this series will have a long, long life, not only on television, but in the classroom and all sorts of places. It's an evergreen, I guess.
And it couldn't have been told without your support.
That's absolutely right. We'll talk more, Greg, so don't go away.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is the moment to show us that you appreciate this story of the Medici and all that this station offers you all year long. Please remember, we're a member-supported station, and this is the place where you discovered serious, well-crafted biographies for the very first time. For that reason alone, think about making a generous show of support by picking up your phone and becoming one of our partners in our next great adventure in television.
Michelangelo, now in his 70s, resented Cosimo's dictatorial style.
Has discovered 4 new planets rolling about the sphere of Jupiter, the true cause of the Milky Way, and that the moon is not spherical. He has overthrown all former astronomy.
Even now, we're still indebted to the Medici. Their legacy is very much a part of our daily lives in this 21st century. But this station is a part of your life, too. And now is the time to say thanks for the rich legacy of programs we continue to share with you and your family. Hello, I'm Midge Woolsey.
And I'm Rafael P. Roman. Call the number on your screen or log on to our website and show your support for the Medici. Make a contribution at whatever amount suits you best and enjoy the final moments of this fascinating story as an enthusiastic member of this station.
Show your support for this station with a $60 contribution, and we'll send you The Lives of the Artists by the 16th century art commentator and theorist Giorgio Vasari, who knew firsthand many of the painters and sculptors he writes about. When you join this station with a contribution of $120, we'll thank you with your choice of the companion double VHS set of the Medici or the single DVD of all 4 hours of our docudrama series.
And for your generous contribution of $250, we'll thank you with Laurie Schneider Adams' beautifully illustrated study of Italian Renaissance art, covering the artists, sculptors, and architects who flourished for years under the patronage of the Medici.
Once you've made up your mind about how much you're going to contribute, then make that call and remember to charge your contribution if that's what you'd like to do.
And it's a pleasure to once again welcome Greg Dieffenbach to our broadcast of the Medici, as we've said. Greg is the Vice President of Production and Development for De Villiers Donegan Enterprises, the team which produced the Medici for PBS. Greg, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Now, 4 hours of the Medici must have been very tough. Tough choices involved. How did you choose what to include?
Oh, the choices are very tough indeed because you have such an enormous swath of history. Nearly 300 years. The story spans 3 centuries, really. And you have to make the decision based on those characters you thought had the greatest impact on history. We also made a decision early to talk largely about Florence. So the stories as it revolves around Florence, that's where we mostly stuck.
Yeah, I guess when we were talking to David Grubin earlier, he was talking about Napoleon. That's one character, 4 hours spent on one character. That's a great way to sort of zero in, to think about the city as the character, I guess.
Yes.
Any favorite Medici family member or anyone that you particularly loathed?
Well, there are certainly big characters. I think probably my favorite would have to be Lorenzo the Magnificent. He was a fantastic character, a spectacular patron of the arts. And some of the characters that we remember across history, Botticelli, Michelangelo, we can look to Lorenzo and thank him for those. On the negative side of the Medici family, one could say that Giovanni, who became Pope Leo X, Giovanni's not perhaps the most favorite character, though he was certainly flamboyant, but he really did take the church right to the brink and push it over and helped bring about the rise of Martin Luther, really.
I guess his cousin Clement was a close second choice. But what message do you have to give to our viewers who have been watching this wonderful program but haven't yet made that call of support?
I would say call and support. Really, these kinds of programs, they don't happen without resources. You can't tell a story this big with this much production value without support, so I would urge them to support.
And of course, as always, we're not asking folks to break the bank. We're only asking them to give what they can afford, whether it's $60 or $100 or $250. Every pledge counts, right?
Absolutely, and they can be, you know, their own Medici to whatever degree they can, whatever they can manage.
Absolutely.
Patron of the arts.
Yes.
Every dollar counts.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks,
Thanks,
Greg.
Greg. We'll talk again.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you realize by now that whatever you contribute almost certainly guarantees that more programs like the one we've just enjoyed will be part of this station's schedule in the months ahead. So if this is the kind of television that you love and that you've come to expect from us, please tell us with a phone call and a contribution right now.
That's right. Dollars from viewers mean programs for viewers. It's really as simple as that. Whatever you give comes back to you as new series and specials. The Medici story we're watching right now is one of the best and latest examples of why this station counts on your support. So call and contribute whatever you can.
And if you did make that call in the last few minutes, you know you have our thanks. And now, back to the conclusion of the Medici, Godfathers of the Renaissance. Well, we've come to the end of the story of one of history's most important and scandalous families. If we've held you spellbound during our pageant of history, politics, religion, art, and the magnificent Medici, then please show your appreciation with a generous contribution for more programs like the Medici, Godfathers of the Renaissance. Hello again, I'm Raphael P. Roman.
And I'm Midge Woolsey. A call and a contribution is one sure way of letting us know what programs interest you most. Thanks to contributions from viewers like you, public television has given us the definitive story of the life and times of the Medici. And now we'd like to know how much you enjoyed this extraordinary 4-hour film about the dynasty we loathe for its shortcomings and admire for its legacy.
Show your support for this station with a $60 contribution, and we'll send you the lives of the artists by the 16th century art commentator Giorgio Vasari, who knew firsthand many of the painters and sculptors he writes about. Join us with a contribution of $120, and we'll thank you with your choice of either the companion double VHS set of the Medici or the single DVD of all 4 hours of this docudrama series.
For your contribution of $250, we'll say thanks for that generous gift by sending you Laurie Schneider Adams' beautifully illustrated study of Italian Renaissance art, covering the artists, sculptors, and architects who flourished for years and years under their Medici patrons.
So choose the amount that's right for you or the bonus gift you'd like to receive, and then simply call the number on your screen or log on to our website to make your contribution. It's important to all of us here at this station to have you as one of our partners.
Well, it's been a real pleasure having Greg Dieffenbach of de Villiers Donegan Enterprises with us. Greg is DDE's Vice President of Production and Development, and of course DDE produced the Medici for PBS. And first, Greg, I should say congratulations on a tremendous success.
Thank you.
At the end of the program, folks who watch carefully no doubt see that this series was made possible by PBS, DDE, and then Channel 4 in England.
Yeah.
So some people may be sitting there saying, well, so I don't need to make a contribution, but there's a slide that says viewers like you. What part do viewers play in the funding?
A critical part, because PBS puts up an enormous amount of the resources to make this kind of thing happen. And those PBS resources come from viewers like you.
Mm-hmm.
So what's next for DDE, Greg?
Well, the Empire series continues. This Medici is a piece of a much longer, multi-year running series on PBS under the Empire's banner. And coming up, we'll have Japan, Memoirs of a Secret Empire. And then over the horizon, we'll be looking to Marie Antoinette and the story of the French Revolution.
Ultimately, I think you said 40 hours total.
It'll be some 40 hours, yes.
Interesting. What part of the film would you say for you has made the deepest and longest lasting impression?
I think when you look at the Medici family, you're struck by the fact that a handful of people with considerable passion and energy and drive were able to profoundly shape their world. And you realize that essentially we live in the wake of their efforts. The changes that they made affect us to this day, and that makes history feel very alive.
Very quickly, back to the idea of viewers like you. Very quickly, your strongest argument to the viewers for calling in and making a pledge.
The shortest, simplest way to put it is programs like this just don't happen without the support of viewers like you.
Okay.
And Greg, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, from great performances to our children's programs to documentary series like American Masters and American Experience, we want to keep setting higher standards for the entire broadcast industry. Did the Medici rise to the occasion? If you think so, let us know by making a call and a contribution to this station.
It's up to you to decide how much you want to contribute to help this station continue to serve you well. And you know from your own experience watching television these days that very little comes close to matching the variety and quality of our programs.
You know, and with all the changes taking place in the television industry these days, our message is still the same. It's simply this: if you like what you see on this station, your support is what keeps us going year after year.
If you've called in with a contribution, you have our sincere thanks. If you haven't joined us yet, do something good for this station, for your community and yourself by making a contribution.
You know, you still have time before our next program begins, so please, make your call and your contribution right now. Thank you.
You're watching KAKM, Channel 7, Anchorage, translating throughout South Central Alaska.